Welcome back, friends. Buddy here at Haas of Props. This week, I'll be building a Gondorian soldier's spear or lance. This project has been sitting in my studio for over a year now because there has always been other projects that have taken priority, but with the lull in TV, movies, and new content, I finally have the time to finish it and share the process with you. We see a ton of these spears throughout the Minas Tirith and Pelennor field sequences. There are some amazing shots, but I was fortunate enough that several years ago, one went to auction, which meant that there were high-res detailed shots on the internet that allow me to replicate the pointy end as close as possible. The spear measures 8 feet long from the tip of the point to the bottom of the shaft. It is 3D printed and uses a wooden dowel and a PVC pipe as supports. I'll show you what I mean, so let's head to the studio and let's get started. While the shaft pieces are still printing, I begin cleanup on the pointy end pieces by sanding them with a 120 grit sandpaper pad on my hand sander. This end of the spear is approximately 26 inches long, so in essence it's like a short sword attached to the end of the shaft. Next, I switch to some 150 grit and continue to sand. By printing the pieces in black, it allows me to better see what has not been sanded and where print lines are still visible. The pieces were printed with a 0.09 layer height, which means finer lines and a finer quality print. After the 150, I typically would switch to some 220, but I was out and ended up using some 240 I had lying around the shop. The little bit of difference in the grit won't make that much of a difference at this stage of the process anyway. Alright, all the pieces are sanded and they definitely feel a lot cleaner and smooth. Not perfect, that will come later on, but they're at a good place in order to achieve a metal finish on the final piece. But for now, the pieces can be assembled, and to act as a support between them, I use a 20-inch long piece of 3/16 inch dowel. I begin by squeezing some E6000 into the opening in the print, and then press the dowel into the hole. This will push the glue down into the hole while also covering the dowel, giving better adhesion. Glue can be inserted into the next piece and it can be slid down the dowel. But before pressing the pieces together, I squeeze some CA glue onto the flat surface and then align the pieces together. The CA glue can be cured instantly with Zip Kicker, and the E6000 will cure slowly and remain flexible, which works as a nice shock absorber for the internal support. The third piece can be attached the same way, so it's looking something like this, and now it's time to take care of the seams. To hide them, I smear on a thick layer of spot putty, and once it's dry, I sand it down with some 400 grit. While I continue sanding, I would really appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button, if you haven't already. It's completely free to you and will help my channel grow, plus if you click the notification bell, you can customize your notifications so you'll never miss a build. Thank you! After the seams are smooth, I take some of the spot putty and mix it with some acetone in a 1:1 ratio, and then brush this onto the entire surface. This will help fill in any layer lines that may still be visible, scratch lines from the sandpaper, or any spots that may be uneven or not easily reached with the sandpaper. After the mixture has dried, I smooth it with the 400 grit. I know it seems like a lot of sanding, but it's a tried and true method I have found to never fail me, like vapor baths and just priming have. With this layer of sanding, I'm really just evening off the putty that was applied. Some of the print may show through, but that's not a problem unless you really feel unevenness in the edge. Next, I'll spray the piece with some 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer. This will act as a primer layer and will also help even out the surface. Some people print the object and go directly to this step, but I have found it to be a hassle and it uses a lot more of the primer. I've applied 3 coats and have let each coat dry for about 30 minutes before applying the next, and after I have let it sit overnight, I'm going to wet sand it with some 1000 grit. To wet sand, just apply a thin layer of water to the object, and then with a super fine grit sandpaper, polish up your object. This process will give you an object so smooth and it won't look 3D printed anymore. When the object is completely dry, I'm going to spray it with some glossy black spray paint. 3 thin, even layers should get complete coverage and help avoid runs, and the combination of the black and the gloss really helps metallics shine and read as metal finishes. After the black has dried, you can really see how all the sanding has paid off. The object is smooth and looks like one solid piece. At this point, I'm going to use some metallic silver. Now, I'm not going to completely cover the black. I'm just going to give a couple of dusting sprays so the piece ends up looking like this. You can see some of the black still showing through, and this will help give a realistic metal appearance once we're finished. Now I'm airbrushing on some metallic tin acrylic. This will keep the paint looking like metal by toning down the brightness of the silver and add a slight color variation which will give the blade more visual depth. Once the tin is dry, I very lightly airbrush some black over the entire piece. I'm holding the airbrush about 8 to 10 inches away from the blade because I only want a slight dusting. Black is one of those colors where it can go too far too fast, and the distance here helps even out the spray and avoid getting dark spots. With all the paint dry, I'm now going to use this gold on the Minas Tirith sigil. I don't want to go too heavy, so I'm dry brushing it on. That way I can build up coverage to the point where I'm happy with it. Okay, now the blade is finished and all the shaft pieces are printed and ready to be assembled and painted. They've all been sanded just like the blade, and now they're ready to be attached. For the support, I'm using a 5' 5 and 5/16 inch piece of 1/2 inch PVC pipe. I know it's a lot of numbers. You can use something else like a wooden dowel or conduit if you have it handy. The piece is attached to the support the same way as the blade did to the dowel. First, E6000 into the opening and insert the PVC. This time I smear some E6000 onto the pipe before I slide on the next piece. Before the pieces touch, CA glue is placed around where they will touch, and they're pressed together, and Zip Kicker is used to cure the CA glue instantly, allowing me to move on to the next piece, and so on until the shaft is assembled. I use the sander on the seam to even off any of the glue that may have squeezed through. Then the seams are coated with a layer of the spot putty, which is then sanded once it's completely dry. I skip the putty acetone mixture and directly spray on the 2-in-1 filler and sandable primer, which is then sanded with the 400 grit sandpaper, and then wet sanded with the 1000 grit. That way we are left with a really smooth, polished shaft. Next, after it's dry, the entire shaft is based in a dark brown. In my case, I'm using burnt umber, which works really well as a base when painting dark wood tones. Then I create a wood grain pattern with some yellow ochre after the umber has dried. By dry brushing long lines where the brush is barely touching the surface, it creates the illusion of a random wood grain and is really simple to create. When that's all dry, to tone down the yellow and blend the wood grain with the base, I'm brushing on a black wash. This is a technique called glazing in the theater world, and by keeping the paint as a wash, it blends all the lower paint levels together, and in doing so adds depth to the paint job. Once dry, glue it into the blade, and there you have it, a Gondorian soldier's lance. The clean, sleek elegance of the blade is accentuated with the 6-foot long shaft attached to it. These are perfect for sticking orcs as they try to come over the wall, or to use on horseback so you have a nice long reach to your enemy without needing to get too close. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed this build. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to make one of these for yourself, I posted a link in the description. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends and family. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at Haas of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.